Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, I was not a Christian. In fact, I barely even knew God in real sense. After my divorce, I became majorly depressed and seriously financially strapped. And so I began to look for other ways to feel good. And I began to sell drugs for the money. Process of selling drugs, I began to use drugs. And very, very quickly I became a crack addict. It was a really bad time in our lives. My children were devastated. They didn't know exactly what was wrong, but they knew that something was wrong. It was tragic. It was really tragic. I ended up losing everything. My children, my home, my car, all the beautiful jewelry my ex-husband had given me. I lost everything. And I almost lost my life. Because one night I was in a house and all the drugs were gone and all the money was gone. And there was nothing left. And there was nothing left to do. And I just lay there and I prayed. I prayed to a God that I really didn't even believe in at that point. But I prayed to die. I knew that I was no good to myself. I was certainly not a good mother. I was of no use to anybody. And I couldn't be of any good to God. So I just asked Him to let me die. The next morning when I woke up, I was pretty angry. Actually, I was very angry because I had wanted to die. I did not want to see the sun come up another day on the person that I had become. As crazy as it sounds, I had made a phone call the night before, and I had called an unknown woman. I'd never met her before, but someone had given me her number. And I had called her and left probably some crazy random message. But the next morning, she returned my phone call. And she asked me 2 questions. Did I want help? And where was I? She came to pick me up. And she reached out to shake my hand. And I tingled all the way up my shoulder. Didn't understand that then. Had no clue what that meant. But she took me home with her. She took me into her own home. And she nurtured me and loved on me and mentored me for 7 full days. She put the Bible in front of me in a way that I had never seen it before, even though I had been raised in church. And one day as I was going through some painful memories, she said, "You don't believe this, do you?" I said, "It's difficult to believe right now because I'm experiencing withdrawal of the worst kind. I don't like myself. I don't like what I did. It doesn't look like I have any hope. No, it's really hard for me to believe." And she said, "Do me a favor. Believe that I believe until you can believe for yourself." And I thought it was fair, so I set out with that in mind, that I was going to believe that she believed. After 7 days of living with her in her home and getting drug-free, I still had to deal with a lot of legal issues. Legal baggage had been piling up for a couple of years, and I had not really addressed any of it. I was actually arrested just a few short days after I left her home, and I was in jail. At that point in time, they had given me a $10,000 bond and told me I either had to come up with a bond or go to court, whichever came first. I had no money, obviously, but I sat there waiting for my court date, and each day that went by, I became more and more anxious and more, I want to go home, I want to go home. So one day I was sitting and I was reading the Bible. Actually, I was reading in Lamentations, and suddenly it just dawned on me, hey, Billy Joe will make my bond. So I got up, to go to the phone, and I laid my Bible down, and I walked away, but when I did, the pages turned. And I thought, well, that was really odd, and I went back and picked up my Bible, and it had turned itself to Psalms 27:14. Wait patiently for the Lord. I was like, well, that's pretty strange right there. And kind of forgot the phone call for a few minutes, and I started reading again in Lamentations and studying. And again, an hour or so later, that urge to make that phone call. So I laid my Bible down, and I got up to the door. The pages turned again. And I was like, now that's really freaky. So I checked the vent to make sure that there was no air or anything blowing pages. Went back to pick up my Bible, and it was there again on Psalms 27:14. And by this time, I'm beginning to get just uneasy with this. What does this mean? What's going on? Believe it or not, the third time I got up to go make that phone call, the pages turned again, right back to Psalms 27:14. And I said, I get it. I got it. I will wait. So I began to study. I went into a period of prayer and fasting, and I studied, and I was just relentless. I was starving to death for knowledge and wisdom of this almighty God that people were talking about. I wanted to know more. As it turned out, I did go to court, and they let me go home, and I hooked up again with my mentor, and all was good for a little while. And I learned, and I studied, and I grew. And word kept coming to me, I have a plan for you. I have a purpose for you. I thought that was the grandest thing I could ever hold on to, because who am I? I'm a crackhead, and I've lost everything, and I've given away what I didn't lose, and I'm worthless. I am completely worthless. But this God that everybody was promising me, He said He had a plan for me. A few months after that, I was doing pretty well. I'd managed to get a job again and find us a place to live, and Dylan and I we were doing okay. We were doing okay. I wasn't using. Can't say that I was actually in recovery, but I wasn't using. And I got up one morning to go to work because I had to get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I got up one morning and I was just miserable. I just felt heavy. I wasn't sick. I didn't have a temperature. I wasn't coughing or any of that, but I just felt heavy. And I got in the shower, and I remember standing there, and I was like, God, I don't know what this is about, but you do. So just please lighten the load, because I've got to work 9 hours today. Got on, went ahead, got ready for work, and I didn't have a car, so I walked. And I was walking up this side road in Cookeville, and God spoke to me as clearly as my words are right now. And He said, you have to let your grandmother go. I thought I was hearing things. And I was like, I don't want to let her go. I want to see her. Please let me see her again. And again, He said, I have to let her go. It's time. She wants to come home. I sat down on the side of the road and just screamed and cried. I didn't know what to do with that knowledge. I didn't know what to do. But when I quit crying and I walked to work and I got there, both of my bosses were Christian women, and I told them, and we went into a back room and we prayed. And they helped me accept the fact that my grandmother was going to die. 3 days later, Aaron had come home because Dylan had something going on at school, and so both my children were there, and my telephone rang. And I looked across the room to Aaron and I said, please answer that. He said, Mom, it's your phone. You answer it. And I said, I can't. It's going to be my grandmother. Aaron answered the phone, and it was one of my brothers-in-law calling to tell me that my grandmother had passed away. So I learned to listen, and I learned to know the sound of his voice, and I learned that he loved me and that he cared for me in a way that no one ever had. I wish I could tell you that it was a peachy keen story after that, but it wasn't. I was still in trouble legally. Actually, at that point in time, I was on community corrections, house arrest with a bracelet and the whole bit. They monitored me everywhere I went for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I was begging my probation officer, I was begging him to put me in a program to let me leave Cookeville. Because at night, even though I was clean, at night people would knock on my door and beat on my window and want to come in so that they could do drugs. So it was a very difficult time for me because I wanted to be clean. I really wanted to be clean and free of drugs. But all the relationships that I had built up to that point involved other drug users in that lifestyle. So it was really easy for me to relapse and to violate community corrections. So they sent me to prison. In nobody's mind is it ever a blessing to go to prison and be incarcerated for extended periods of time. But for me it was. It truly was a blessing because it took me away from my circle of drug user friends. It took me away from all the things that reminded me that I had been broken. It just removed me from there and let me start all over again. I was incarcerated for just more than 2 years. It was 26 months total. And in that 26 months, God worked in me and with me. I could hear his voice almost every day. I learned how much he truly did love me and how much he was willing to do for me. I spent a lot of time in study and in building that relationship, in recovering my heart. But the one thing I found is that he fixed me. He fixed the brokenness in me that led me to addiction. He took the addiction because once I said I want to be clean, he fixed it. I didn't want to use drugs anymore. He gave me the desire in my heart to be clean and sober and to become the person that he wanted me to be, the person that I wanted to be. It was just awesome that even though I was in prison and it was oppressive and it was dark, it was depressing, each and every day that I woke up praising God for it. To me, it was just one of the most miraculous things I'd ever seen or experienced. My name is Vickie. This is my story. Is it your story?